guys, welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and in today's video I'm going to be building an awesome gaming PC for 2021. I'll be running you through all of the components I chose and why, including MSI's Suprim RTX 3070Ti, the latest Ryzen 5000 CPU, and some super quick Gen 4 storage. I'll then be taking a look at just how well the system performs later on in the most popular games at the moment. Without any further ado though, let's dive into it after a quick ad from today's video sponsor. The Corsair K70 RGB 10 keyless Champion Series keyboard is one of Corsair's latest releases and builds a keyboard in an awesome 10 keyless form factor. The Champion range has been specifically developed with top esports pros and builds on years of testing. RGB can be easily customized in Corsair iCUE as usual, while durable PBT double shot keycaps and Cherry MX switches guaranteed for 100 million keystrokes keep you on top of your game. Learn more at the link in the description below. Let's actually kick things off by looking at the motherboard and processor and RAM and dealing with some of our bigger, bulkier components a bit later in today's video. This right here is MSI's B550 Tomahawk, and it's the motherboard, the first component in the system today. It's the part of the build we'll be assembling all of our other components onto, so picking one with a good feature set is pretty important. This motherboard is a great choice for this build because it's got 4 RAM DIMM slots, support for the latest GPUs, Gen 4 NVMe SSD support with some heatsinks, it's passively cooled, and it has a built-in rear I/O shield. The next step is to go ahead and install the processor, which for us today is AMD's Ryzen 5 5600X. This is a powerful 6-core 12-thread chip that still beats out the comparable Intel options in terms of the 11600K. Pricing and availability on the latest Ryzen processors is still a little bit tricky at times, but latest information on that front can be found in the description below. To install our 5600X, you want to simply find the little gold triangle on the processor and then line this up with the top left-hand corner of our CPU socket. Pull up the arm, match those triangles into place as I say, drop the processor in, push the arm down, and you're good to go. The CPU is installed, and we can move on nice and easily to the RAM or the memory for today's build. This right here is Corsair's Vengeance RGB Pro, but in white. This is probably the best looking memory kit for a build like this, where we're building in a white case, with a white cooler, a silver GPU. It just gives you those nice light colour tones and is going to work amazingly well. Corsair's iCUE software as well is fantastic for customising the RGB, and support for Corsair iCUE on our MSI motherboard just means it's a win-win all around. It really is a perfect combination. In order to install the memory, find the notch on the RAM itself, line this up with the notch on the RAM DIMM slot, click them into place, and you're good to go. Moving on nicely to the storage then for this build, I've picked up one of Seagate's Firecuda drives. This is their 520, which is sort of their entry-level Gen 4 option. You get the super fast speeds of PCIe Gen 4 in a price tag that doesn't particularly break the bank. When I'm talking about fast speeds as well, I really mean it. Check out these results on your screen now. You've got basically a factor of 10 over the SATA drives that were commonplace maybe 2-3 years ago. Installing this drive is also really easy. Simply find the notch on the gold connector of the drive, and you're going to line this up with our little slot on the motherboard here. You will have a heatsink on by standard, but we've gone and taken that off so you can see the drive in all of its glory. Locate the teeny tiny little screw and unscrew this with a small screwdriver. A standard flathead or Phillips head, will be far too big. Then you're able to simply slide the drive into place. It's probably easier to do this at a 45-degree angle before actually pushing it down and securing it with the screw you just removed. Once you've done this, the CPU, motherboard, RAM and SSD are installed and the build is basically halfway there. Next up on the list today then is the case and the cool... Whoa! Oh, that was not good. That was very bad. Corsair, if you're watching this, it's all fine. Don't panic. Your case is going to be okay. Because this right here is Corsair's 5000X RGB. It's the RGB version of their 5000 series. We've featured this chassis on the channel a few times now. That's because it's a great option for a build like this. With a vertical GPU mount, plenty of room for water cooling, shameless plug for our own water-cooled build we did in this not too long ago, support for large 360mm radiators, power supply shield, basically every key feature you could want in a modern case can be found inside of this chassis. And it's perfectly paired up with Corsair's very own H150i Elite Capellix. This is the iCUE version, so it comes with some snazzy RGB fans as standard, which when combined with the fans already included in the case, are going to make for a great build today. We'll be installing the cooler a bit later, but first let's go ahead and get the motherboard in, do one thing at a time and not get too carried away, because I think we've already learned today what happens when you get carried away. And the oh, that was not good. Looking good. I hope you like the montage there, something just a little bit different. And it moves us on to the cooler we talked about a moment ago. As much as I did actually describe the cooler, I didn't talk about the installation process. So that's what I'm going to guide you through next up. Aesthetically as well, this is the perfect cooler for the case. Genuinely, it doesn't get much better than this as far as matching up your colorways is concerned. The first step of our CPU cooler today is actually to screw the radiator into the top of the case. You want to pop the fans on at this stage as well. I'm thinking the top makes the most sense, though you also could mount it at the front or on the side if you wished. You then also want to attach on these little brackets that comes included with the cooler and are specifically designed for AMD processors. You can tell by just identifying this little D-loop on the mounting hardware. This is what's going to slot over the plastic brackets which come pre-installed on any AM3, AM4 motherboard for AMD CPUs. Screw the radiator in, secure the bracket into place, plug all your fans up, and you're ready to go as far as the cooler is concerned. Next up then, now that the cooler is installed, is to move on to the GPU. Now I'm actually really excited about this one. I've been really impressed by the MSI Suprim cooler on their previous 3080 cards, but now the new 3070Ti has landed, and they've put a Suprim cooler on that too. Now we've reviewed the 3080 Suprim in the card section here, and I'm hoping that the positive results we found on the 3080 are mirrored on the 3070 Ti. It's not our first experience with this new GPU from Nvidia that aims to plug the gap between the cheaper 3070 and more expensive 3080. Now I know that GPUs are still really hard to buy, and that pains me more than anyone, trust me. The 3070 Ti though is a really powerful GPU when it comes to gaming at 1440p and even 4K. Whether it's support for the latest ray tracing tech that you're after, or DLSS, which is of course Nvidia's very popular AI-backed resolution scaler, the 3070 Ti executes well in terms of the impressive Ampere feature set. Now I have also gone ahead and picked up this is Corsair's PCIe riser cable, which will enable us to use the vertical GPU mount. Now, I should be clear that this GPU is quite chunky. In fact, you can see how much it sticks out over those PCI Express lanes. That might mean that there isn't quite enough clearance, or that temperatures are too impeded if it does fit. But there's only one way to find out, and that's to actually install the damn thing. So let's do the riser cable first, then slot the GPU into place and see how it looks, and then test the airflow later if applicable. Oh yes, technically that does fit, although the airflow is not going to be particularly strong. Let's go ahead and actually screw it down and see if that makes any difference, then pop the side panel on, before of course installing the power supply, which is the last component of the build to deal with before looking at performance. Moment of truth time then. If we slide the panel on, it is technically pushing up against the GPU, which isn't good, but we might be able to just get a little bit of a foam sticky pad on the top and bottom of the card just to push it in a very touch bit more and make sure we've got airflow clearance. Because on the left-hand side of the GPU, there's definitely about this much of a gap for air to get in. Now, of course, you don't have to run the PC this way. You can put it in vertical mode or horizontal mode, but this way looks incredible, at least aesthetically. And that brings us on to the final part of the system today. That was really heavy. And that is, of course, none other than the power supply. Now, this is MSI's A850GF. It's an 850 watt 80 plus gold certified unit. MSI have entered the world of power supplies and SSDs and CPU coolers, and basically every component you could want. So make sure to hit that like button if you'd like to see us make an all MSI gaming PC build. This video won't be a detailed cables and wiring guide, but we have got one on the channel which you can find in the card section now. So let's go ahead, install the power supply, plug all of our cables and connectors up, and then boot the system up to see just how well it performs. But first, how good it looks in an epic GeekaWhat montage, something regular viewers of the channel have come to know and love. I'll see you in a second, but first, roll that montage. Awesome stuff! I've got to say, this has to be one of the best looking PCs we've built in a while. And although the vertical GPU mount might not be the most practical thing ever, it looks utterly incredible. But does it perform how you might expect for a 3070 Ti based system? Well, I'm glad to report the answer is yes. In fact, on your screen now is all of the different results we were able to gather as far as performance is concerned. I'll be taking a closer look, as always, title by title. You guys know the drill, kicking things off with GTA 5. A little bit of a precursor, we did test at higher resolutions for this build for obvious reasons, but if you'd like to find results for lower resolutions, check out our other 3070 Ti coverage on the website, YouTube channel and our benchmark channel. First up though is GTA 5, and here, using the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode, we achieved an impressive 131 FPS on average. This was at 4K high settings and really was a fantastic experience. Yes, GTA 5 is a slightly older game now, but it's still a fantastic test and a benchmark you guys can repeat at home super easily. Just copy our settings and see what frame rates you're able to achieve. Next up on our hit list today is Call of Duty's Black Ops Cold War. At 1440p high with DLSS and ray tracing enabled, we got 113 FPS. 113 frames per second when leveraging the power of Nvidia's ray tracing and DLSS. 90 and 99% numbers were pretty good as well, and all of our frame rates, as ever, were captured with both Nvidia's FrameView and MSI Afterburner's Riva Tuner. Next up is a little bit of Apex Legends. We did test this at 4K, but I thought 1440p would be a better middle ground for those of you looking for maximum FPS. Here we got 163 frames per second at 1440p high, with 90 and 99th percentile results of 140 and 117, giving us some really consistent frame rates throughout as far as Apex Legends is concerned. Valorant was also really positive. 4K high settings yielded 247 frames a second, around 98 FPS, less than 1440p, but definitely stronger as far as visual fidelity goes. 247 frames is probably going to be enough as well for most of you guys watching this video, and it really was an impressive showing. Cyberpunk 2077 is next up on the list today, and here at 4K high settings with DLSS enabled, we achieved 75 FPS. I know Cyberpunk isn't the most popular game out there right now, especially because of how difficult it is to run regardless of your system spec. Thankfully though, the 3070 Ti's got more than enough power to make Cyberpunk possible and showed it really well in this build. We also tested out a little bit of Fortnite at 1080p competitive settings. This is the only title today where we tuned the resolution right down by popular demand. Here we got nearly 300 frames per second on average. You heard me right, nearly 300 frames in Fortnite on average. Absolutely bonkers stuff. Surprisingly as well, at low settings, the game looked pretty good. So definitely consider competitive settings if you're a big Fortnite player out there. Finally then, the last game we tested out today is Call of Duty's Warzone. In Warzone, we managed to get just shy of 130 FPS on average, with 1440p high settings and DLSS enabled. We've talked about DLSS before, but it's Nvidia's awesome AI-backed resolution scaler. This isn't a sponsored video or anything like that, but DLSS is definitely worth a look and still a huge differentiator over the AMD cards on the market. And you can learn why in one of our recent AMD GPU reviews over on GeekaWhat.com in the cards section now. With that though, that pretty much wraps it up for today's video. If you enjoyed it, get subscribed to see more from us here at the GeekaWhat team. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, we'll see you soon.